Isn't it poetic in these times where the public schools are increasingly held to new standards and new levels of accountability, then you drive a Mack truck right through that system and create a whole new system with public money that has no level of accountability.
Choice advocates say competition created with public funds will force public schools to improve.
Sure. We are talking about public education here, irrespective of the form that it takes. It doesn't follow that because the state has an interest in the education of citizens, it must control and routinize the kind of education which is offered. And clearly, there are many things which government recognizes it cannot do very well, and it goes, therefore, into the private marketplace.
They're going to have to be more effective. They're going to have to be more attractive to their customers, the students and the parents. And I think competition can help the public schools reach that point.
That's not what it's doing. I don't think it's making the public schools more competitive. I think it's taking a lot of our good students and leaving us with more of the problem students.
Jonathan Kozel, author of Savage Inequalities, argues against free market competition between schools.
If we accept the idea that competition between schools is the engine of reform, then we cannot logically say, but the only competitors will be the kinds of schools I might run or you might run. If choice is good for you and me, then there's no way that we can keep out David Duke and Louis Farrakhan and Patrick Buchanan and anybody else who wants to go into the schooling market. And that's the real danger. It is uncontrollable, and it will fragment America, and it will balkanize our society.
Choice opponents working within the system for public school reform claim that choice recreates an unjust system. Choice could lead right back to the social problems common schools were created to solve.
The children and the families that choice proposes to help are the main ones that they are not showing how to get into the system.
Well, I got news for you. The very people promoting this don't really want those kind of children around. Their children.
People say the choices will be equal, but of course they will never be equal so long as the prior round of education was unequal. There are conservative advocates of vouchers who reply to me when I say that. They say, well, that sounds rather patronizing, as though you think poor black people aren't smart enough to make choices.
My parents were poor, but we weren't stupid. Sometimes people think because you're poor, they equate that with stupidity.
Intelligence isn't the issue. Access is the issue, being well-connected or being locked out of a loop.
The Spencer Foundation sponsored an independent study by Professor John Whitty.
The one difference is the parents seem to be more educated than the average Milwaukee public school parent.
This finding is of major concern to choice opponents, as well as some choice school administrators. What kinds of families take advantage of choice?
School system. Would these be active parents? Would these be helpful parents? Would these be parents who would be on the PTA and who would be trying to reform the school? They probably would be among that group.
In his most recent report, Professor Whitty found that even with this active clientele, achievement levels for choice school students were lower than those of a random sample of MPS students.
And I think that there's a real problem if they can't show results with the type of kids that they are getting. I mean, I wonder what type of education is going on in those schools.
The Carnegie Foundation examined school choice programs nationally and reported that limited evidence about the effectiveness of private school choice suggests that such a policy does not improve student achievement or stimulate school renewal. They also found that choice requires significant administrative and financial support. It is not a cheap path to educational reform.
There was one school, Juanita Virgil Academy, that simply closed its doors in February, and it was a very bad school. There was no question about it. The parents were very unhappy, and it went out of existence in the middle of the year, and the students had to go back to the Milwaukee public school system.
This is the third year of the choice program in Milwaukee, and in this third year, only 59% of the kids are returnees. What happened to the other kids? Why didn't they go back? Now, I don't know if anybody's checking on that.
And this year we're going to try very hard to locate those students and find out why they are going back to the public schools or where they are ending up.
We are not saying that parents have to stay in our schools if they don't want to stay, but I don't know anything about people leaving the choice schools. Here in Milwaukee, we don't have that problem.
In Milwaukee this year, which is 1992, under the state's program, there are 690 seats available for the school choice program. Only 620 are filled. That is, even in this limited number, we don't have enough parents selecting school choice to fill up the seats that are available.
Civil rights leaders say the main thrust of the 1964 Civil Rights Act was to ensure that all students in all schools had the opportunity to share equally in education. Choice, however, only allows 1% of MPS to enroll in the program.
When you talk about 1,000 children going someplace, I want to know what you're going to do with the other 59,000. You have to make it good for all of them.
Choice programs in other cities have led to white flight on a massive scale. The Capital Times recently reported that in the first 2 years of the Choice program in Des Moines, Iowa, 413 students applied for transfers. Of those, 402 were white. White flight in Iowa has left the inner-city public schools in a life-or-death struggle and the community in turmoil.
In Massachusetts also, it's unleashed the flight of white from black and Hispanic. So in Massachusetts, as in most places, choice has had a clear-cut segregative effect, and it's also helping to segregate people by economic class. In that sense, it's very dangerous.
I remember that during the time of Brown versus education, in the South, they used choice and vouchers to move the white children out of public school into private schools. Now, I don't want to repeat the history.
Milwaukee is already considered one of the most segregated cities in the country. At least one choice school mirrored the community.
My kids were given an opportunity to go to a school. And I said, okay, we'll try this school. And it's a choice school. We finally had to go to the classroom, and when one of our kids said, listen, I don't want to go to school. And then I said, why? Well, hey, the white kids are sitting on one side and the black kids are sitting on the other side. I said, I just walked straight to the principal's office and said, my kids are out right now.
Choice also excludes students with special needs.
We will not be able to help a child who is really disabled, non-functional, so that would definitely have to be done by the public.
Oh, some of them will shake their hands and I'll say, but every child can come. But that isn't really true, because if I'm in a wheelchair and can't get through the door because the door isn't wide enough for my wheelchair, I cannot come.
So, educational Darwinism, that's what we're talking about in a vouchered system.
To some, choice contradicts the principles of democracy.
I see people wanting to take advantage of children. I see people wanting to change something that is part of the bedrock of the democratic spirit in this country, and that's the common public schools, just for their own good. I guess people can judge for themselves whether people who are doing that are irresponsible or not. I just think it's plain unethical and wrong.
In a 60 Minutes expose on the Milwaukee School Choice Program, Mike Wallace ignored the conservative push for privatization of schools. Wallace painted Polly Williams as a courageous crusader fighting for the poor, but neglected to expose the source of her financial support. Analysis of Representative Williams' State Ethics Board reports from December of 1990 to January of 92 indicates that she received over $25,000 in speaking fees, much of which came from conservative organizations like the Heritage Foundation. Her reports were not yet available for the rest of 92. But in a 1992 pre-primary campaign finance report from Milwaukee County Executive, Polly Williams received $10,000 from the William J. Hume family of San Francisco, California. A Federal Election Commission listing shows that Mr. Hume contributed to Pat Buchanan and other conservative Republicans. Because of her crusade for choice, Representative Williams was a guest at the White House and received a minor contribution from the Bush Education Group of Miami, Florida. Representative Williams refused to be interviewed.